Hello folks and welcome. So today's video is going to be about possibly automated backups. I'll first show you the example, and if you're interested then I'll talk about details. So let me open up a drive. I have lots of drives. This one is blank, and I have something sitting in my startup folder. As you know, everything that's in here that's turned on normally gets performed during startup. So right now this is creating 4 folders. And if you're interested in something like that for automated backups, then I would say continue watching. So I will close this down, and you are watching this on Linux for Seniors. You should see an icon of a person kind of floating around the time date. You can click that to subscribe if you like. 280 videos and growing. If you don't see that icon, look me up on YouTube. This is Linux Mint 21.2 Cinnamon. This video is not everybody's thing, and this is considered maybe medium to advanced material. I'm going to break this down in 2 sections. One for some of the folks that know a little bit about script files, and then toward the end of the video I will discuss how to make script files from scratch, because that's what runs most of the show here. And I'll also start with talking about this drive that everybody can use. So this drive is actually auto-mounted, and this is formatted with extension 4 for this user only, Mary. This drive here is also mounted and also got extension 4. Mary's not privy, or she doesn't have the right permissions to view that one. So we can do the same thing with that if you like, or we can use internal drives. So let's first talk about getting this out of the way. Let's talk about getting your drive ready if you're deciding to use internal or external. If you decide to use external drives, I'll just use that as our guinea pig for today. There's 2 tools that come to mind that are already built into Mint. One is Stick Formatter, and the other one is Disk Utility. Gnome-Disk Utility. Anyways, this tool is very limited though. Yes, you can find your USB-based drives, and you have 4 ways to format: file allocation table 32 or extension 4 at the bottom. I'm going to use extension 4 because extension 4 also supports file permissions. It allows me to do a little bit of privacy. And then of course don't forget, change your name to whatever you want and format. But this tool does not do auto mounts. So for me to do automation, I need to have this drive auto mounted when I log in. And I'll talk about that tool in a second. So after I formatted that with extension 4, you should probably, if you're wanting a little privacy, is to right click on it after you mounted and take a look at your property permissions. All right, so Mary Tester is our user for today. It's just a made-up name. If you'd like to follow along, you can certainly do this, but I'm going to make sure that Mary has create and delete file options and read-write, so we can apply permissions. Mary belongs to the same group called Mary, and so will your user, but I'm not going to bother with that. And then also everyone else that's not Mary, I'm going to make sure that I click None and No File Access and apply permissions. So Mary's the only one who can view this drive, and that gives her, everyone else will be looking at something like that. So it's a little bit of privacy, if you want to call that. So there's another tool that I actually need to auto mount this drive. Because if I'm going to use that with automation, in other words, this part here, I need that auto mounted, because these actions here out of the startup applications are performed immediately as soon as you log in, if they're on. So all that's required is, and I normally would suggest using the same port, although I have tried different USB ports, is to make sure that the drive is on when you power it down and power it back up, if it's one of those powered drives. Okay, but it will take care of auto mounting through this utility right here. So open up disks. You will have this installed. That's why I'm talking about the tools that you have installed. You can certainly install others, but I'm just going to talk about the stuff you already have with the Cinnamon desktop. I have lots of drives here. I'm really not going to talk about the rest of them, but this is Gnome-Disk Utility. So as you can see, I have lots of hard drives. None of them have a little power button on them, except for the last one, because these are internal drives. That one, on the other hand, has a power button. So that's a portable hard drive or USB based. And you can see where it's formatted with. If you need to format it in here, you can certainly do that. There's extension 4. There's NTFS. There is file allocation table 32 or FAT. And then there's other. If you decided to use exFAT, check your permissions. You may find they're root. So be careful with that one. All right, and don't forget the name if you're going to use this tool to format with. And I'm not going to talk about LUKS encryption today. But more importantly, just that and the name and next. Okay? There's a second reason I brought you in here. So this drive here, I'm going to make available for me as long as I have it powered up when I'm running. And then when I turn off the computer, this drive normally shuts down too. And then when I turn on the computer, this fires up also. Does that make sense? That magic is done through here. Edit mount options. This is how yours will normally be on. It'll look like that. I want you to turn that off and make sure these two options are on for this to work properly. For auto mounting. Mounted startup, show in user interface. Then I'll come back to this a little bit later when I talk about script files. Okay, so far so good. So as a recap, we formatted this with extension 4. We made sure that Mary is the only one that can create and delete files off that drive, and we're ready to go. Now we need a file to test this all out. So I'm going to go up to my documents folder, or Mary's, and talk about this folder right here. Does it have to be in a script folder? No, you can put it in whatever folder you want. I just find this convenient. So I wrote this script file, and I do recommend that you copy and make a backup folder also, just in case you want to do a lot of edits and duplications. So let you see what that looks like. Okay, then I'll talk about, for new users toward the end, how to create one of these completely from scratch. It's going to be using rsync. So let me briefly talk about this. So TimeShift uses rsync. You are asked to activate that during your installation process. If you're not aware of this, this utility normally by default uses rsync. It's spelled a little differently here, but this rsync is rsync, remote sync. This normally is making snapshots of your system files. Okay, and you can see I even have an old one in here from, looks like a year ago. So anyways, at the very end of this statement, I have a command called --delete. What that does is it will take and sync this folder, documents or pictures, music, or my junk folder, and to the current drive that I have listed here, and also will make sure that the files are in sync by using that command. If you are not using that command, what happens is the files from here, they do get rsynced over to the other drive, providing it's on and ready to go, but it will not delete stuff from here. It will only keep adding to it. And that is actually preferred by some users, believe it or not. And a lot of people can't wrap their head around that. So with the --delete though, it makes sure that this is synced up with that. And if you have extra files in here, it will delete them to make sure that it matches this folder. Hopefully that was clear. You can do this with or without that statement. I will talk about the full details of this toward the end of this video. All right, so we have this drive here. It's currently empty. I'm going to use F3. Split pane, extra pane, whatever name you want to give it. It's currently nothing here. On this side of the house, I'm going to be working with Mary's documents. Mary is our user for today. So I'm going to sync that up to this here along with some other folders. We're just going to focus in on documents for a second. So I will actually use the automation part here to my advantage, because that file is just linked to this right here. It doesn't matter if I turn it on and off. I'll show you this also from scratch in a minute. But I'm going to use that run now command to sync this up with this drive. So it's going to sync up not only the documents folder, but also music, my junk, and pictures. What Mary has in here is the documents, music, pictures, and a folder called my junk. So far so good? Okay, I'm just going to open this one up. Then I'm going to enlarge the icons so they match. So you can see this. There are 3 folders and X amount of files. So the way I wrote the script is to make sure that this folder, this one here is Mary's documents folder, is synced up with this one on this drive. Folder for folder, file for file. If I delete something, it'll delete it here. If I add something, it will be added here. If I added something here and I sync this up, it'll remove it because it's not here. Does that make sense? Okay, so let me do it this way. We are going to first create a folder. I'll call it hello 4. Sorry, I already got 3. So hello 4. Then I'll create another document, and we'll call that one test, I don't know, a bunch of 8s or something. All right, that's probably good enough. So these currently don't exist here on this USB backup drive. This could be an internal drive also, but this is a backup drive. All right, again, you can think about this process many ways. But I want this to be synced up with there. Obviously, I have a difference. First of all, I have hello 4 doesn't exist over here. And this test 888 doesn't exist over here. It will now. And that's finished. These are exact match. As I remove hello 3 and delete test 77 and resync, it'll remove those. Okay? Because my intent was, I told it to do this. I added the -- delete to the documents folder in my script file, and I told it to make sure that whatever I have here is matching over here. Folder for folder, file for file. Adding something is no big deal. Hello 5. Okay. So I will click that and sync up. So I should have an exact match. 4 folders and X amount of files. As I delete them and perform a sync up, it should remove them also. If I add a file on the drive itself, just to be silly, just to let you see this, and I do a sync up, this one takes precedence. It will make sure that that file is not there, because you're told it to make sure that this is synced up with this. So that'll remove that file, even though that's on the portable hard drive. That file is going to go away when I do this, because I told it to do this through the script file. Let me open up the scripts again for you. I'm only dealing with documents right now, but there's other folders in here also with the same commands on the end. Everything that has the -- delete will make sure that that folder is synced up with that folder. File for file, folder for folder. If this is not here, and that is preferred by some folks, I've shown this in the past, then it'll leave the files. Does that make sense? Let me modify this script, because I'm going to remove that statement. Only for the first line though. I'll leave the rest of them because we're not really playing with them. I'm going to hit save though. So it saves my setting. So right now it's going to only sync forward, and it will not delete anything on this document folder. It will just keep adding. So let's go back in here and, sorry, I meant to click it this way. And I'm going to start from scratch. Okay. So this side of the house, we'll just do documents, Mary's documents. And this one is obviously the drive. So the first thing I'm going to do is sync up. And we're really not going to focus in on these 3 folders. We're just going to do this one. So we'll click in here, and this is Mary's documents. So they're currently in sync. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make some changes. I'm going to first delete hello 5 and then add a document. We'll just call that one test bunch of 7s. All right, so I deleted hello 5, which is currently here on my backup drive because I had that set earlier, but let's go take a look at this file. So I have the -- delete turned off on my documents. What that means, it's going to preserve this folder. This one right here. I did it again. I apologize. This folder right here. This folder, on the other hand, when I do a sync up, is not going to remove any of this stuff. You notice there's no hello 5 here in Mary's original documents because she deleted that on purpose, and then she added the file with the 7s on it. You can also do the same by editing these files. And if you edit something, it's a new file, is how rsync will look at it. But it will not, when I do this, delete anything. It added the file, yes, but it's not deleting. So let me delete 7.7 here on Mary's original documents and resync. This did not get deleted. So even if I add extra files, and I perform another sync up, I'll just create a folder just so you can see something being changed. What are we at? Hello 6? Sure, why not? So I created hello 6. It's still retaining the other ones, and I'll sync that up. Hello 6 is here. However, this is still here, so is that file. These don't exist over here. Because all I'm doing here through the script file, by the way, is I'm going to, I did it again. All I'm doing here through the script files is I'm telling it not to delete anything through that statement right there. It doesn't have the -- delete. So now I'm going to put that back. Providing I did this right, I'm going to save. And again, I'll talk about how to put this in for new users a little bit later. Now, I am going to not make any changes here. That's the beauty of using this thing. You just made the change on your script file. So I'm going to rerun that. But before I do that, I am going to open up the documents folder again on Mary's side so you can see them. I currently have 4. This has 5 folders and X amount of documents, including that test 999 and also the 777. When I hit sync now, it will eliminate these 2 and also whatever else I don't have in here. So that's a match set. Folder for folder, file for file. rsync is pretty smart. It also knows that if you have a file that's been altered and you make a change to it and you perform a sync up, it will sync the file to it if you altered a piece of text. So let me see what these look like. I'm going to add some lines in there. Actually, I'll just make a lot of spaces and then I'll add some text. I'll just write the word test and save the file. This is a.txt. So a.txt on Mary's has the word test. On the backup device, it does not. It just has basic fat burning soup thingy. Make that bigger for you if you like. So when I hit sync up, you won't see hardly any changes unless I have the attributes turned on. So then you can see the changes, but it'll just look like a blank. Actually, it didn't even blank, but this is changed already. See, it has the word test in it. So rsync is very smart when it looks at files and folders. It will compare them from your originals to the one on the backup device and say, did anything change inside of the folders or the files? That one was changed, sync it up. Did that file change? No, don't sync it up because it's already there. I don't need to bother wasting some precious bandwidth time of transferring files when they're already here and there's no alterations, because it looks at the attributes of the file, the modification part. That's how it knows the difference. All right. So for the folks that just wanted the bare basics, again, script files with the --delete is the way to go when you're syncing. And hopefully if you worked with script files before, you understand what these are. Now for the folks that do not, hang on. I'm going to explain how to make these from scratch. Okay. These over here, on the other hand, is very simple to do. So all you do is hit plus, custom command, give it a name. You can even call it X if you like. And then find your script file, wherever you saved that. Okay? Want to delay or not? That's all up to you. Want to comment or not? That's all up to you. Okay? They're done in alphabetical order. So I'm going to erase the drive again, just to let you see that it performs this, even with a different name on it. So again, this would be ran normally when you log in and out of your computer, because it's the startup folder. I'm going to hit the gearbox. It still creates these folders no matter what, because it's based off this script file. Okay, and then you can turn that off, of course, if you don't want it run during your login process. That's the beauty of doing this. You can just leave that there. You can also rename that later if you like. It's just a link. That's all this is. Okay? It's just a link. So even if you change the name, I'll perform that one more time because these are pretty quick. It doesn't matter if this is on or off. Whenever you hit that, it's a manual run. And that's the only reason I'm doing this. This would normally be done if this is on during the login process, providing this is auto-mounted, of course. So let's talk about script files for you new folks that have never done this. Okay, so I'm going to wipe the drive again. I've been abusing this drive forever and a day here, and we're going to talk about script files. So again, Mary's our user. Do I have to really make a script folder? No, you can call it whatever you want. It's just easier for me to find this during this video. Okay? That's just a file. It doesn't have an extension on it. So create yourself a folder and then right click and start creating documents. Empty document is your standard text editor. We're going to deal with the name later, and I'm going to open this up, and this is Xed. You can use other text editors if you prefer. However, if you're brand new to the game of writing scripts, Xed is just as good as any. Okay. I'll open up this one so you can see what I'm doing. And then I'll enlarge that. Filming in 1920 by 1080. So we're going to start with the process at the top. What is this thing called and why do we need it? Well, since we're writing scripts using rsync is remote sync, kind of like timeshift. Timeshift uses rsync also, but we need a bin bash statement. So it's pound, explanation point. All of these are found on your upper row on your keyboards. You may have to hit the shift key. It's I think it's number 3 and number 1. And then no space, /, which is found near your enter key. And then type in bin /bash. So what does all that stuff mean? That's the location of where born again shell is, bash. Let me take you to the file system for a second. In my about section on my YouTube site, you will find a link that explains the file system for Linux. So if you want to learn a little bit about that, I do encourage that you subscribe and also go into the about section and find that link. So that's root. Everything starts from root. If you want to think about it like an upside down tree. In here is the standard home folder. And that's where all the users are located except for the root user. They normally have their own, which that one is locked. Here's bin. Down here is a bunch of things that have gear symbols on them. Over here is bash, born again shell. That's what that stands for. And it's not spelled the way you think it is. So if I type in man space bash, I'll make this larger for you if you like. It's spelled this way. All right, so the born shell has been around for a long time. So this is born again shell. Has So that's why that's called bash, closing terminal. So we need that statement as our first line. I'm going to get rid of the file manager now. So we need that in our brand new document as the first line statement. I'm just going to copy it. You will be typing this, obviously. Okay. So this is our bin bash statement. Keep in mind there are no spaces in here. So that's required. So the next line I'm going to talk about is rsync. Rsync again is the similar like your timeshift. Timeshift uses rsync also, but it's copying your system files when it's doing that. There are many options with rsync. This is only one. This is the archive option, which is my favorite, and it's very powerful. Copy that and toss that on my line 1. That's my first rsync line, the beginning of it. So I also need a source, and what is my source is documents. Now, why is there a funny squiggly looking guy in front of it? Well, that funny squiggly looking guy you can usually find on your upper row on your keyboard next to the number 1 to the left of it. Okay, so we have Mary. If you've ever clicked on your home folder and did this on Linux Mint, you'll see home and then your name. And why is that? Is that a double negative? Not really. In your file system, there's the main home folder. This is root. All your normal users are listed here. So now you can see that I have more than one user today. However, I can only access Mary's. These are locked. So that's the same. If I open this, it's the same thing as me clicking that. All right, so this is Mary's documents folder, and it says home Mary's documents on it. Well, I don't want to type all that silly stuff, so what I do is I put a tilde in there. That represents Mary's home folder. That's all that thing does. And I'm sure you can figure out what this part is. That's standard documents. Copy and paste. Now you notice that tilde is right next to the A. You need a space in there. Spacebar time. You make sure there's a space after the rsync and the -a if you're going to use that option. There are many options. And a space between the A and the tilde and your, well, whatever you're copying. And make sure the spelling is correct. So in this case, it's documents spelled with an uppercase D and a / on the end. Sometimes I use it with or without. But I'm going to talk about the next line. This part here is very cryptic looking, and this will be different on your machine. This is where this comes in handy. Well, at least that's one way. I had this open earlier, if you recall, and we were talking about this drive. I started talking about formatting, then I dropped over to edit mount options, and I asked her to make sure that these are the way they are set up so you can do auto mounts. But now I'm going to talk about this part right here. So you can click in there once to highlight the box red in my case, because I'm using a dark theme, and hit Control-A, which selects everything. Or you just click and drag your mouse across, and then right-click and copy that. Because who wants to type all this stuff in? Okay, I'm going to paste it right in here. So it's a long string of stuff. And the chances of me taking a look at that drive here, you can see the red box popped up. It has the same thing on it. It says MNT, WWN, something, something, something is all in here. And the chances of me making a typo is pretty high because if I were to type this in manually. So that's why I open up the utility here and copy it manually. So I'm done with that. However, I need a space in here. So a lot of folks will say, I like 2 spaces. I prefer just 1. You want to put 2? You can try that yourself. Okay, I like the 1 space. Okay, so if you're wanting to butt these right up against here, as soon as you eliminated that 1 /, you went too far. So put it in manually. You can find it next to the Shift key normally on your right side of your keyboard. All right, and make sure you go right before it and hit the space bar. You want a gap in there. You are separating the source from the destination. So that's destination. That's the name of the drive. In this case, that one. You can actually see that part of that in there. It says MNT / WWN blah, blah, blah. So I added this on the end with that command there. So I can either copy that or I can hand type it in. So that would be /. That's creating a folder on that drive. And we can call it anything you want. You can call it junk if you like. But keep in mind, it's going to be copying your documents into a folder called junk. So you probably want a better name for that. How about if we just use the same name? Now, let's double check the spelling. Does it look the same? If it is, we're good to go. Because whatever you typed in here is what it's going to create, even if you misspelled it. This part, on the other hand, has to be correct for it to find this folder with correct spelling. This, on the other hand, you're creating a folder yourself. So what does this one do? If you don't add the -- delete, then what it'll do, it'll sync up your documents folder to this new created folder on this drive without deleting anything. It always adds. It always adds. That would be adding files and folders. It won't remove anything. Some people prefer that option. However, a lot of folks prefer this one. -- delete performs a sync up folder for folder, file for file. Even if you create manual files on this drive here in this document folder, it will delete them based on what you have here. That may not be a desired effect, but most people don't do that anyways. That's why I have these on here. But I can do them without, and I've shown that before. Because some people prefer that. They don't want the files to be deleted because they want to maybe have that for later in case they inadvertently delete that by accident. So pick wisely, as one would say. All right, I'm done with this statement. I'm ready for save. We're just going to do one. Now it turns blue. Now I'm going to close. If I made any alterations to the other one, it'll also complain, but I now have two files here. So I double click and it opens up immediately to a text editor, right? You're not done yet because you should be able to double click and it should give you a run statement and display. Run in terminal, display, and cancel on run. Run just means that I can run this as an executable text file. It's like a program, if you want to call it that. This is currently not doing that. Because, first of all, you probably want to change that to some other name. That's item 1. And 2, to make that executable. So it doesn't matter which order you do this in, but at least probably rename that. I'm going to call mine X because I can. It doesn't require an extension. All right. Right-click, Properties, Permissions. Make sure you allow this to be executing as the file as a program. In other words, make it into a program. Kind of like a program. It's a script file. All right. If you did not know how to do this, extra pane is F3. It makes split panes. All right. We currently have nothing here. Then over here is my script file. So I'm just going to run it to test it. It does work. Always test your scripts before you do automation. If I wanted this, would I do both of these at the same time? No. Why is that? Because I told this one to also make a folder called Documents with the delete commands. This script over here also has the same in line 1, also with the same folder name. So no, it would not be advisable to run both of these at the same time, because one would override the other depending on which one I pick. We could change this one here to something different. We can call that Documents 2 and save the file. I'll leave the original and rerun this one. Now it creates another one. They both have the same amount of files. I'm just using the back arrow key on my mouse. Okay, so that would be acceptable. Now, if I have both of these in my startup folder, and I can either choose to activate both of them, or I can choose to activate only one at a time. So let's talk about this part, automation. So I already did this, and I'm going to create another one from scratch. I'll just do the plus thing, hit custom command, and what are we going to call this one? We're just going to call that doc backup. And we're going to put in a comment of folder documents 2, something like that. Now we're going to find our file, and I saved it in documents scripts. Does it have to be in a folder like this? Nope. And it's X. And I already tested X because that's the whole reason I was showing that first, to make sure that it works. Then you add it in here. Do you want a startup delay or not? Let's do a 5-second startup delay just to throw it in there. Do I need to run this during login? Well, if I don't, then I'd turn it off. Can I still use this later? Absolutely. You can turn it on later too. Everything in your startup folder, startup applications folder, if it's on, will be performed during login. You can also do these actions by themselves. So I'm going to wipe this drive clean again, so we just have nothing. And then I'm going to run both of these. So the first one, I'm going to run this one. It's called Documents 2, and then I'll run this one. That one creates documents, skips over that one, creates music, my junk, and pictures. So these are technically the same right now. Okay, so I'll close that. Why you'd want to do something like that, that's all up to you, but I'm just giving you some things to think about. You can certainly rename these folders. But now I have double backups right here. Would I do that normally? No. I'm just showing you this as examples. However, once I create a script file, though, I do recommend copy them and make yourself a backup folder and dump those in there for later on use. You can always edit these things. But if you inadvertently delete or make a really bad mess of this, you have a backup that you can open and rename or put back to where you had this. Keep in mind, those things that are in here are looking for a path to go to the exact same file. Okay, this one here is going to pencil time. It's going to your documents folder scripts. It's not going to scripts backup folder. So that way you can pull the script out and put it back in there in case you inadvertently deleted it or made a mess of it. You can pull it out of your backup folder and place it in here. So in other words, if this happens, this is not going to run. So I will wipe the drive clean again, just to show you this example. I have it sitting in my backup folder, yes, but this doesn't know where it's at. So this right now will not work. I will run it right now because it doesn't know the location of that file and it doesn't give you an error. So be aware of some of these situations. I needed that file in here because I told it where it's at. So in this case, I would just copy that, keep the original, and paste it in there. Then I can rerun that. Now it's doing that. So what happens if I don't put this property on for some reason? I forget about this process. Let me show you what happens to that. That would be this one. All right, so that is this one. If you want, I'll get rid of the folder too to make it blank. And then I want to run this one. Nothing happens. You don't even get an error. You have no idea what happened. I know what's happened and you know what's happened, but the system doesn't give you an error. Because all that's wrong with this is if I double click on it, I know something's wrong with this file. Because I can't even test it now. I don't have a run button. Unlike this one. Because it's an executable. That's how you know that right off the top, that it's proper. So if it opens on a text editor immediately, it's not a script file. Well, it doesn't have the execute on, let's put it that way. Now, if I rerun this over here, this should be able to go. And we're done, with the exception of the last folder. Thank you for watching.